Hi, this is Gordon. This is a little slideshow that I decided to make with the photos that I took during my trip to Japan this past December. I was there, uh, I think December 11th through the 21st. And so this first photo is actually of the house next door to the Airbnb that I was staying in an area of Tokyo called Meguro. I was particularly surprised to see that the flowers were still in bloom, even though this was December 11th. This is a sign that I took a picture of along the street in Meguro as I was sort of walking around the neighborhood. Um, I liked the little uh, Buddha statues, which are actually, I think, Jizo statues, who is a Buddhist deity who's sort of a protector of children. But also, you can see how the street looked at night. I guess they had trimmed those trees back, but the it felt more like late October, early November in terms of temperature and humidity. It was much more humid than it was when I left Massachusetts, and the temperature was probably somewhere in the 50s, 50 degrees Fahrenheit. This is at the first place that me and my friends stopped at for dinner the night that we all kind of met up in Japan. This was a small little family-run restaurant, which was it's sort of the style of restaurant that's called an izakaya in Japan, which is a bar that serves tapas. And so, there's a glass of Japanese beer and a stewed daikon radish, which was one of the things that we had ordered. This is the following morning, so I think technically day two in Japan for me. I went to the local 7-Eleven, which, unlike in the US, has some pretty high quality fresh food regularly stocked. And so I got those two triangles there are rice balls. And so one was, I think, salmon, and the other was pickled plum, which is called umeboshi. Um, and they had this really ingenious wrapper that they use where you can tear a strip sort of from the top peak of the triangle down the middle and pull off the plastic bit. And the plastic keeps the seaweed, which the rice ball is wrapped in, separated and sort of dry and crunchy. So you get the dry, crunchy, salty seaweed, and you still kind of get the nice moist rice and whatever filling is in your rice ball. The thing in a plastic container at the bottom are mochi dango, which are sweet rice flour dumplings dipped in sort of a sweet and salty miso glaze. And then the bottle of coffee was just sort of, it's sort of, I would say, the equivalent of like a Starbucks Frappuccino, but in the uh, in the store they actually had a separate machine which held hot drinks rather than just sort of the normal cold drinks. And so since it was winter, I went and got one of the warm drinks. That's just a close up of the mochi dango to show, sort of the glistening glaze. And you can also see the little centers are a little darkened because I think they actually lightly toast uh, the dumplings on like a little griddle before they put the glaze on them. And technically, you're supposed to put it in the microwave so that you eat them warm, but I just ate them as is. Though I will say I did share them with my friends, so I only had one of these skewers. This was a funny bike rack that was out front of a coffee shop that was in the neighborhood called SIC Coffee. Um, Unlike a lot of the other businesses, which were all run by couples in like their 70s or something, this was run by a guy who was probably in his 30s, maybe 40s. and it was a coffee shop during the day and a bar at night. This is starting to get into kind of the more urban areas of Tokyo. So I think this is Shibuya. And so I had taken the train in from Meguro into Shibuya. And I just took a picture of this sign because it has the beckoning cat, which is called Maneki Neko. And so to beckon someone over in Japan, you hold your arm up and sort of you move your hand. It's sort of like as if you were like clawing or petting motion, rather than having your palm upturned and then pulling towards you to say, come over here. Anyways, this is a sign for a karaoke place is what it's actually for. This is where we were headed in Shibuya. My two friends who I was traveling with and I. This was a ramen place which was famous for its shrimp-based broth. And this is just another shot of all the buildings in Shibuya. I liked the reflection of sort of the skyscrapers on one of the facades there. And I think we may have been crossing over from Shibuya into Roppongi at this point, and Roppongi is a little bit more built up, has fancier hotels and sort of high-end shops. So like Tiffany, I just particularly like this sculpture. And this was just a cool looking gate to, I think a Buddhist temple that we passed by that was along the street, and it was just sort of off on a side street. There's sort of a better view of just the front of the gate. And so after lunch, we went to a department building in the area and went up to the top floor, and there was a viewing deck, and you could sort of see over a lot of Shibuya and Roppongi. And you can see here that the trees still look like it's sort of late October, even though it was December there. And so after we came down, we were walking again and we passed along this. And this is actually a Shinto shrine rather than a Buddhist temple. And you can tell it's Shinto because of that red gate. That's a torii that are outside all the Shinto shrines. And inside there were some statues of these foxes, which are fox spirits. And in Japanese, foxes are called kitsune. But I think the sort of Shinto spirit of the fox is called inari. And I guess this was the second day. And so after we had gone to lunch in the afternoon, I went out to the covered kind of shopping street in Meguro, because I knew that there was a hobby shop there. And in Japan, there's a chain of sort of used goods stores. The flagship store is called Book Off, and so it sells used books and various other things like DVDs and toys and other stuff. The one I headed to in Meguro was actually called Hobby Off, so they specialize just in collectibles, so like models and stuff. And so I was after some figures of this Japanese superhero whose name is Kamen Rider, which literally translates to masked rider. And so these were some of the ones that I picked up. And actually, you can see the Kamen Rider down on the bottom right has a fox mask, or a kitsune mask. So this was probably day 3, me just walking around in the morning. This is a interesting statue or a sculpture in Meguro that was just sort of a metal tree with little birds and squirrels all over. And speaking of birds, this is another thing that I saw on my walk on that morning. This is one of the jungle crows that they have there. And so The jungle crows are actually from sort of Southeast Asia. They're the size of like ravens here, so they're quite large. And the reason that there are signs everywhere in Japan to, not leave trash out or dispose of your trash, and actually, there are very few kind of public trash cans just around. You have to go and either put it in a bin that's sort of next to like a 7-Eleven or at home. And it's because they don't want to leave trash around for these crows to get in. So this would have been, I guess, day 4. I took the train to sort of the northern part of Tokyo called Akihabara, which is the old electronics manufacturing district. And there's still some remnants of that. There are little, specialty shops where you can buy components. If you want to get components for your computer, like if you are building yourself a desktop computer, Akihabara would be a place to go. There are plenty of camera shops and shops for other sort of video recorder equipment there. But something that it's become known for foreign tourists is it's a center of anime and manga and video game related stuff. So, fan culture. And so this place is the Tamashi Nation store, which is sort of a store of one of the major toy manufacturers, Bandai. And this was actually like a showroom that they had. So inside they had just displays of all the stuff that they make, almost set up like a museum with little placards explaining which series they're from and, what year they're from. And so you can see the variety of designs that they had on display. And this was really cool. This was actually a little diorama that they had set up of one of the robots who can transform into a jet fighter. And so, from the bottom, he kind of goes through this stages of transforming from, humanoid robot to half robot, half jet to full jet. This is actually from a different store in Akihabara, which was like a hobby supply store. And so this is actually a model kit that I assume one of the staff members at the store had assembled as sort of a showpiece. But there's sort of stores that specialize in selling fully manufactured things that are assembled and painted, but there are also bunches of stores for sort of hobby supplies. So if you like to make model airplanes, model ships, or model robots in this case, you can find all sorts of paints and glues and resin gap fillers, as well as unassembled kits at sort of these hobby shops. And this was just, I thought, a really cool looking model kit. And so some of these model kits, you don't even have to necessarily glue. They're just, the plastic is injection molded into sort of these different colored sprues. And so you just clip off the pieces and then snap them together into what ends up being like a fully articulated figure. And so this was something that I was specifically searching for while I was in Akihabara that I managed to find. This is the character Kamen Rider Black Sun, who there was sort of a recent Amazon series that he was from. It's sort of a reboot of a Kamen Rider series that actually came out the year I was born, 1987, but it's sort of a modern reimagining. So it has sort of a more monstrous, I guess, semi-realistic look to it. And these are some smaller things that I found while I was going around in Akihabara. But you can see that the two guys on the left, again, are further design iterations on Kamen Rider, which it's a series that's been going since 1972. So there's sort of a lot of, I guess, history, but a lot of designs related to it. This is actually a very cool thing that I got while I was in the area. There are these machines which are capsule toy machines, which are called gashapon in Japanese, and that comes from the onomatopoeia. Gacha is like crank, so you turn the little crank, and pon is like when the little capsule falls to the bottom where you take it out. And so in these little capsules, you can get kind of various toys. And so unlike the quarter machines that we have here in the US, the machines they have there in Japan take a 500 yen coin, which is like $5. So what you can get is actually, much higher quality in terms of paint and sculpting and stuff. So this was a angel figure I got. This would have been the morning of, I guess, the fourth day. And so this was just a park in Meguro. I was there, probably around 8:30, so the sun was just coming up since it was late winter, casting these sort of really pretty rays through all the trees. In particular, it was catching these ginkgo trees and sort of backlighting them. So that's what the bright yellow is. Those are ginkgo leaves. And so once I had come out of the park, I noticed that there was actually a nearby temple, which had all these different statues of different, I think they're originally like Chinese gods, but this is a god of good fortune whose name is Ebisu. And I think he's sort of a god of material wealth, and he's holding a red carp or tai. And so you'll often see him depicted, laughing like this, holding a fishing pole and a fish, or in this case, he's just holding the fish that he's caught. And I had to look this guy up. I'm actually going to pull up the Google page to remind myself the name. So that is Daikoku, who's a god of good luck. And so on his back, he's carrying sort of a sack of treasure like Santa Claus. And in his right hand held up, he has a magical mallet, which you can use, and you can wish for whatever you want, and then strike the ground with the mallet, and where it strikes, what you wish for will appear. And so in front of each of these sort of deity statues, there's these little offering boxes, which is that little red post with a little slot. And so you put in, a couple yen, and then pray to the god and to intercede on your behalf. And so you would go and pray to whichever particular god you were seeking help with. I think, like, if you want help on your exam, you'd go to one god, versus if you want help with your business, or I don't know, finding love, you'd go and pray to some other different gods. And so this is leading up to the Shinto part of sort of the area. And so there is a Shinto shrine. And again, there's that torii, even though it's not red. And so inside that temple would be where, supposedly the relic or Shinto deity resides. And so people were actually, going up and, praying at some of these places. And so I tried to be respectful and not take pictures of anybody close up, or you're also not supposed to take pictures of the insides of the shrines or temples. But I figured it's early morning, there aren't a lot of people, so going around and taking pictures of the outside was fine. And so this is another Buddhist deity. This is the god Fudo Myo, who sort of is a defender of the Buddhist faith, a vanquisher of illusions and punisher of the wicked. And so he's holding a sword in his right hand, and in his left hand he holds a rope to bind, I guess, evildoers. And he always is shown with sort of this flaming halo behind him. And then I don't know what's up with the two smaller figures. I assume those are his attendants. And this is a statue of, I think, an ashura, which is actually an Indian thing. And so Buddhism was transmitted from India through China to Japan. And so some of the iconography looks kind of more like, more Chinese, like those lucky gods, and some looks more Indian, like this ashra with his multiple arms and various implements for assisting people. Like I think in his top right hand, he has like a lotus flower, and then he's holding an arrow, and then there's a bow in the other hand, and then he has some sort of prayer bell in sort of his lowest set of hands. And I think this is just a statue of the Buddhist monk Jizo, who sort of intercedes on people's behalf. And I don't think, I'm not sure if this is supposed to be, the Buddha himself or sort of one of his disciples, but he's also holding a kind of prayer staff, which have these rings around them, such that it kind of jangles when the monk walks around. And so that's one of the icons that I recognize there. There's another statue of Fudomyo without attendants, but again, holding that rope and sword with a fiery halo. There's a close-up of that. And so I'm not sure if the entire complex was named this, but I think this was the Meguro Fudosan Taizan Gokokuin Ryusenji Temple. This is a statue of another Chinese deity. This is one of the four heavenly generals. And so I'm pretty sure it could be some other guy, but often these show up in sort of a quartet, one facing each cardinal direction, to represent sort of defenders of Buddha in sort of all the various directions. And so he's standing atop, presumably, vanquished evildoers. And this is sort of was in back of the shrine or temple, and was just sort of a large seated Buddha figure. This is another shot of my ever-expanding collection. I think this is still only after my visit to Akihabara. So this was 2 days worth, but shows some of the larger guys in the back. And so I talked about that Kamen Rider Black Sun, and so I also got two sort of what are called sofubi, or soft vinyl figures, and they're sort of made from more rubbery material, tend to have less joints and articulation, but are sort of more kids' toys. But the level of sculptural detail is pretty great. And that's sort of the same deal of the guy with the lobster claws. That's a monster called Baltan, who's a bad guy from the Japanese series Ultraman. These are two cute little figurines in a shop window. These are called Shisa, or Koma Inu, and they're Chinese guardian lion dogs. This is at a soba place in Meguro that my friends wanted to go to. Both of my friends are, I would say, I guess the term is gourmands, but they're very into sort of fine dining. They're both from New York, and so they were sort of in charge of picking most of the places that we went to eat. And this was a highly rated soba place. I particularly liked this little dish, which the wasabi and onions were on, because it had these little rabbits sort of doing various things. I think the guy on the right is holding a fishing pole and a little fan and chatting to the other one on the left. This is actually from a famous picture scroll that I think was by one of the Hokusais, who you might know for painting or doing the print of the Great Wave. And so this is some of the actual meal. There's some sushi up along the top there. On the kind of the right-hand side is I think that's the miso soup as opposed to the dipping sauce for the soba noodles, but I'm not 100% sure. And then above the sushi is a fried oyster that my friends were sharing with me. But this is really the reason we were there was these are hand cut soba noodles, and so soba is made with buckwheat flour, which is why it's slightly brown colored like that. And you can get soba hot, but this was the zaru soba, which is cold soba noodles. So you quickly boil them until they're sort of cooked, and then you put them in a strainer and run cold water over them to sort of cool them off so they don't overcook and are still sort of springy. And then they're served on that little bamboo mat, which kind of lets any excess water drain. And so you take the noodles and then you actually dip it in sort of a concentrated soup broth that's like a sauce. And then that's how you eat it. And this is some more of those rabbits. This was, I think, I'm not sure if this is the teacup or the or if this was the soup broth cup, but these are actually two rabbits sumo wrestling. So this is the guy who's getting thrown, and this is the guy who's throwing the guy. And so I guess this was day 4 or 5. I've kind of lost track at this point. I think this is 4. And so this is an area of Tokyo that's called Harajuku, which is very famous for its sort of fashion stores and actually people, kind of going and dressing up in sort of their streetwear to kind of show off the latest cutting edge fashion. This is just a cool looking building facade. And this is sort of an interesting mural by, I think, a Western artist that was, as we were walking around, it's almost like a, it's almost like a, Mexican calavera skeleton wearing a kimono. This is at a little, I think, Indonesian style coffee place that we stopped at. And so that's a fancy little latte with the latte art on top. And then on the right is a green tea matcha flavored little tea cake. And so my friends were feeling tired after that. So, and I think actually they may have wanted to go look at a clothing store in Harajuku. So I split off and cut through this major park in Tokyo, which I might, I don't know if it's equivalent to Central Park, but it felt like it to me. It's called Yoyogi Park. And so that's one of those Shinto gates again, but that's an entrance into the park. And so I actually have a particular fondness for Yoyogi Park because the first time I went to Japan in 2009, I stayed at the National Olympic Youth Center, which is sort of a big dormitory complex, and it was right next to Yoyogi Park. So I liked to go and walk through there to areas like Shibuya, or another area that I really like to go to was Shinjuku. And I would always cut through the park to kind of get to see some trees and nature, in an otherwise like one of the biggest cities in the entire planet. And so where I was headed when I split off from my friends was an area of Tokyo called Nakano, because I wanted to visit this particular kind of covered shopping area slash sixth floor, I guess, mall of shops called Nakano Broadway. And so in Nakano Broadway, there are bunches of these tiny little shops, each with its own, you know, extremely specific specialty. So there are a lot of different collectible stores there. For example, this one specialized in Godzilla. This is one that specialized in characters from the Japanese series Ultraman. So this is a funny character. I think his name is Alien Icarus. He's like a little bat creature. This was from a store that specialized in Sotheby monster toys that were original designs by artists rather than based off a corporate property like Kamen Rider or Ultraman. And so, these might be inspired by stuff like Ultraman or Kamen Rider, but is ultimately an original design by an artist. And I actually ended up getting that red guy who's sort of front in this picture because I was so taken with him. This was from a shop that specialized in the series called Kinnikuman, or it translates to Muscle Man. And actually, this actually was in the US when I was a kid in the 80s in the form of tiny little rubber figures in quarter machines. And they were called Muscle Men. And that's actually, it's a subgenre of types of Japanese toys. They're called keshi or keshi gomu, which means rubber eraser, and they're little figurines that are cast in sort of a soft rubber or plastic. And so this is another character from Kinnikuman. This is actually a Sotheby, a soft vinyl toy of one of the characters. This was a very cool little display piece of giant insects fighting some knights. And so this is from a Japanese movie called Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. This is actually in the same shop that the Kinnikuman stuff was in. So this is a wrestling mask of the Japanese pro wrestler whose name is Thunder Jushin Liger. These are various collectibles based on a series called Gegege no Kitaro, which was by a Japanese author whose name is Mizuki Shigeru. And he was sort of famous for his almost, kind of like the Brothers Grimm in some respects of he was a scholar and collector of Japanese folklore, specifically about stories about these Japanese kind of ghosts and spirits known as yokai. And so he made this this comic about this character Kitaro, who was the son of two yokai and has various adventures with yokai characters, both of the author's own invention, but also actual sort of yokai characters that appeared in historical legends. This was just some pretty watercolors outside a little cafe that was in Nakano Broadway. And so, I was there to see all this comic and superhero stuff, but there's really a wide range of stuff that was in that place, including record shops and bookstores and, little shops with art. These are some more superheroes. I particularly liked the Ladybug lady who's from one of the Kamen Rider series. There's that Alien Icarus bat monster, but this is actually painted, I think, by so it's a small company, but it sort of bridges the gap between the artist design original characters and sort of the more you know corporate licensed characters, in that this is a big corporate licensed character, but it's sort of done up with these beautiful airbrushed sprays in sort of these metallic colors, probably hand this may be both hand cast and hand painted in Japan. And so, back in the 70s, Japan was still making bunches of toys. Stuff hadn't all moved to China yet. And so there's kind of a great reverence and nostalgia for that stuff still in Japan, of, the stuff that was made in Japan. I thought this was funny. This is a shop that just specialized in, US comic book characters. And so these are like Ninja Turtle type things. I think these might be called Street Sharks, but it was funny to see them kind of, nestled in amongst all the other Kamen Rider and Godzilla and Ultraman stuff. This was from a shop that specialized in what's called Sentai or Super Sentai, which is the Japanese name for the show that was adapted into Mighty Morphin Power Rangers in the US. And so I don't know if these are drawings by the staff members or possibly, kids who've come to the shop and stuff, but I really liked sort of the, amateur quality that they had. And I just took this picture to show, because I thought it was cool how the entrance to the shop actually had those torii, as if you were entering into a shrine to, all these various collectible stuff. And so this is actually a little statue of the Tower of the Sun, or Taiyo no To, which is a huge, I don't know, maybe like 60 or 70-foot tall sculpture in Osaka that was done for the World's Fair. And this was a shop that specialized in tin wind-up robots. And so, before Japan was manufacturing those Sofubi monster toys, in the 60s and 50s, sort of out of the post-war boom, they were manufacturing tin wind-up toys. And so these are sort of, some of these might be actual ones from that period, and some might be reproductions, modern reproductions of things that would have been manufactured during that period. And this is inside that store with the shrine gates. This is a giant statue, probably like 8 feet tall, of a Japanese superhero called, I think this is Chojin Barom. And these are a bunch of statues of tanuki, or raccoon dogs, which are sort of a popular folklore creature. Raccoon dogs are an actual animal, but in Japanese mythology, they're known for their love of food and drink. And so they're often shown, holding a calabash gourd full of sake. And I don't know, they have like a sack as well, and maybe that's like rice or something. But they're known for being kind of trickster spirits that can actually shapeshift, but are often finding themselves caught in various situations due to their love of food and drink. And so you'll often see them outside like restaurants and bars, although this particular collection was just kind of a little display in a subway station. And so this was, as I was headed to the Tokyo National Museum. This is a giant sculpture by the artist Rodin, who you might know if I zoom in here, you'll recognize. It did The Thinker. And so this was one of his massive, or this is sort of, I guess, the culmination of his uh, career in sculpture of incorporating all these various figures into, I think this is supposed to represent the gates to heaven or hell. But, you know, all these various figures all along the transom and then the side columns and the doors themselves. And so this is like a big sculptural piece outside the Tokyo National Museum of Western Art. And this is a giant fiberglass whale outside their Museum of Natural History. And where I was headed was the Tokyo National Museum, which has a lot of, I guess, archaeological and anthropology stuff, but, you know, historical artifacts from Japan and the rest of Southeast Asia. So these are figures from the Haniwa period, which is right around the development of agriculture in Japan and rice farming. This is a Haniwa figure of a horse. And there's the actual Haniwa period, or I'm sorry, Haniwa are the figures. I think Yayoi is the historical period, which this is all from. So this is a Yayoi period, like Bronze Age horse, you know, bridle helmet. And you can see it's pretty faithfully reproduced in these terracotta figurines that they would make. And so this is quite large. This is actually the size of like a small dog. And so I was into the Haniwa sculptures, but what I was really, really excited to see were these figures from basically the Stone Age era Japan. These are from the Jomon period. And they have these sort of really wild designs, almost like, you know, some of the African masks that you'll see. So I'm not sure if all these types of figurines are called dogu, but this one in particular is. And so I really wanted to see this one. You know, it has very cool, sort of almost alien-like features on the head, though it's been supposed that these actually represent goggles that people who are living in the northern parts of Japan would wear during the winter to sort of prevent the snow glare. So it would be a, you know, wooden set of goggles with slits cut into it. And so you just peer out of the slits. So it was like sunglasses. And, you know, the Inuit and sort of other native peoples in North American continent actually have sort of similar stuff. And here's some more of those Jomon period figurines. And I'm not entirely sure if this is, I think this is also Jomon period. And so a particular design motif that shows up in a lot of the figures is these little grooved and sort of etched swirl lines in the figurines. And this is from a separate exhibit on what are called netsuke, which was a art form that sort of arrived in during the Tokugawa period when the Tokugawa shogunate had conquered all the other shoguns and sort of unified Japan. And so there ceased to be kind of constant civil war. And now that allowed for increased trade and the rise of a merchant class. And with the rise of a merchant class, you began to have a middle class, and people could actually afford sort of little pieces of art. And so netsuke were these tiny little sculptures that I guess are, you know, you could think of as like the precursor to keychains almost. They would be hung from a cord and sort of through the loop that would hold your wallet to, and so it would sort of weight your wallet to your kimono. But they were a way to kind of show off that you were of enough material means to buy some art, but also to show your taste or interests in whatever the sculpture was made. So I think these might all actually be modern Netsuke, but the art form itself comes from the Tokugawa period. Oh, and so this is a character from Japanese mythology whose name is Momotaro, or the Peach Boy. And so there he is coming out of the peach. This is a rabbit. This is a quail. This was a ladybug. And this is to remind myself what the next slide is. So this is a folding screen from the Taisho period, which is in 1914. And the artist is Shimomura Kanzan. But I was impressed with sort of the painting of kind of that ghostly looking fox in kind of the autumn foliage with the oak leaves and everything. And this is a very cool sculpture of a monkey. And so it's by Takamura Koen. And so it's from the Meiji era, which was in 1893. And so this is the outside of the main hall of the Tokyo National Museum. And so in a side building, they had an exhibition which was based around the theme of what will be Japan's kind of cultural treasures 50 years into the future. And so the first thing that you see when you come in is Godzilla, him being a worldwide known kind of pop culture icon. The original movie having come out, I think, in 1952. So there's a close-up of, I think this is probably a replica of one of the suits, because I would imagine something from 1952 would have completely degraded by now. But this is based on sort of the suit went through multiple design iterations. They made movies well into the 90s with an actor in a rubber suit. And so these are some actual storyboards from the film, I assume, again, reproduced, but based off the original drawings. This is a statue of another pop culture icon, which is Mobile Suit Gundam. And so Gundam came out in, I think the 70s. And so it was a Japanese animation about giant robots, but what kind of distinguished it from other shows at the time is that it was a semi-realistic kind of plot. I would say somewhere between Star Wars and Star Trek, in terms of it takes place in a future where Earth has begun to colonize the moon and the asteroid belts and stuff for resources. And so a civil war breaks out between the colonies, who all live in space, and Earth. And so the kind of engines of war in this series are the giant robots, which are called mobile suits, which are piloted by human pilots, kind of like a fighter plane. And so this is the mobile suit of the main character, and sort of the icon of the series. And similar to Star Wars in the US, kind of what has made Gundam such a big deal in Japan is the merchandising, particularly all the various plastic model kits that were made based off the robot designs. And so that, is a large part of how it became so successful in Japan, and also how it sort of spread throughout the world. I remember finding Gundam model kits, I think for the first time in I think it was the early 2000s. It was like possibly 1999, 2000 that they started to show up in American comic book shops. This is just a cool shot of the ceiling inside that hall where they were having the exhibition. And so once I left that sort of side exhibition, I went kind of to the back of the museum grounds where they have a Japanese tea garden. And so throughout this sort of little area, they have, I think, these are probably original tea houses that were on like estates of various nobles, but then taken apart and then reassembled in the museum grounds. And so the tea ceremony, again, like actually Netsuke and stuff, kind of, though it might predate the Tokugawa period. I think it predated a little bit, but it became popular amongst the ruling class as a way to both demonstrate their material wealth, but also as a way to enjoy kind of the idealized aesthetic of being in a rustic setting and then having some tea, and then they would actually like read poetry or admire Chinese ink scroll paintings, and to sort of have a highly codified aesthetic experience. And so when I was in college, I actually got to take some classes on the Japanese tea ceremony, though I'm ashamed to admit I have forgotten most of the specifics. And this was in a side collection of the Tokyo National Museum that was collecting artifacts from the rest of Southeast Asia. So this is actually a depiction of the Buddha from India, and you can see he actually looks more like someone from India in terms of facial features and kind of body type, versus having more East Asian features like statues that you'll see in China or in Japan. And these are fun. These are just these were Chinese tomb guardian figures, and they're covered in sort of a famous technique in Chinese pottery called tricolor glaze, which is sort of a orange, green, and brown glaze that are used on them. But I just liked the really wild designs, like particularly this guy. It almost reminded me of some of the, Godzilla and Ultraman monster stuff that I was seeing in Nakano Broadway. Yeah, and so these are from the 7th and 8th centuries. And so I wasn't originally planning to go into the Museum of Western Art, but I as I was leaving the Tokyo National Museum, I checked what the entrance fee was, and it was something like 500 yen. So I figured, I might as well while I'm here. And so I got to go in, and this is a cool Vanitas painting by, I assume, a Dutch. Well, no, this is a French. Sounds like a French name, Edward Collier. So it's a still life from 1663. This was by an Italian artist. And doing these figure drawing classes that I've been taking recently has made me really appreciate going and seeing the large scale original artworks in museum and sort of admiring the technique of these sort of masters. And so this was by Johann Heinrich Fuseli. It's from 1783. And then this sculpture is by Jean-Baptiste Carpeaux. And so it's from 1857. But again, sort of really admiring, particularly like the hands and the hair on this. So I was glad I went to the Museum of Western Art. I wasn't imagining that that's what I would be checking out while I was in Japan, but again, it was right in sort of this area with all these museums clustered together. So I decided to check it out. And they also had an exhibit of a bunch of different lithographs by Eugene Delacroix from 1828. And so this is from illustrations for the story of Dr. Faustus. And then they also had a series based on Hamlet. So there's Ophelia drowning. And this was a sculpture by a woman who was actually a student of Rodin, who did that giant gate sculpture in the front. And so last name is Claudel, but I do not, I don't know if they give her full name. But again, just cool sculptural work to see. So after I went to all the museums and stuff, I actually went back to Nakano Broadway to search for some Kinnikuman toys, which a friend had requested I go in search of. And so I didn't find it the first day that I was at Nakano Broadway. So I went back. I'd wanted to kind of take a closer look at some of the other shops anyways, but that's what this photo is about. This was at a sort of gallery space called Hakaba Gallery in Nakano Broadway. And so this is a independent artist's interpretation of kind of a comic book character from the 70s whose name is Devilman. And so kind of like the Hulk in American superhero stuff. Devilman can transform from sort of normal human to a giant monster. And so this is supposed to kind of show him mid-transformation. Well, that's a duplicate. And there's that alien Icarus again. So I guess I saw him on the second day I was in Nakano Broadway. These are some fun postcards of what I think are actually just original designs, but clearly inspired by Godzilla and Kamen Rider and Ultraman. There's a little calendar. And I guess this is from the evening where we were on our way to meet my friend Jack, who works at Tokyo University. And so I was wandering around some back street trying to make my way to the restaurant that we were meeting at, and saw this phone booth, which was lit kind of with this yellow cast by the street lamp, but then had the fluorescent light in the phone booth. And so it had this very kind of cool color contrast. So I took a picture. And this was the restaurant that I was meeting my friend Jack, and my other friend who I was traveling with, David, was also coming to meet up with us. And so David, Jack, and myself were all in the same Japanese language class in undergrad together. That's sort of how we got to know each other and become friends. So that was a particular pleasure of this trip, was kind of getting to meet up with my old Japanese classmates from college and tour Japan. And this was actually in the restaurant itself. This is an autograph of, I assume, one of the people who worked on the Kinnikuman comics. And so his little business card is in the bottom left there, but then he did a drawing of the main character of Kinnikuman and did an autograph there. So he had been to the restaurant. So I thought that was sort of funny to see on the same day that I had been in search of the toys for my friend. And so after Tokyo, we got on the bullet train, which is called the Shinkansen in Japanese, and traveled from Tokyo to the city of Kyoto. And so as we were headed that way, we passed by this view of Mount Fuji. which is like the most famous mountain in Japan. Is an inactive volcano uh, that has kind of snow on the cap almost all year round. And so I had to take a photo, and came up surprisingly well, despite being shot from a train going several hundred miles an hour. And so on the way to Kyoto, we actually stopped in I think this is Nagoya. Um, and so we stopped there because my friends wanted to get lunch, and so we went to a place that was famous for its grilled barbecue eel. And so that's what I'm having here is a unagi don, which means grilled eel on a bowl of rice. And so this is the Airbnb in Kyoto. And so it was in sort of a traditional Japanese style townhouse with bamboo mat floors and sort of sliding doors everywhere, though with some modern twists like that kind of interesting lamp that was made out of treated rice paper, which is called, I think, washi paper, WASHI. And so for dinner in Kyoto, we decided to go to a tonkatsu place called Buta Gorira. And so Buta is pig and Gorira is gorilla. So their mascots are a pig and a gorilla. And so tonkatsu is it's fried breaded pork cutlet. And then so it's often served with shredded Napa cabbage, which is that kind of white stuff on the left. And so the following day, we started to walk around Kyoto. It was sort of overcast and rainy, which is why this has kind of a bluish cast to it. But this is a nice, it's a nice duck that was swimming around in the moat of, I think this is Nijo Castle. I'll quickly Google. Yeah, it's Nijo Castle in Kyoto. So there's the front gate. We didn't go in, but I was happy to just sort of see that front facade. And this is just a cool building as we were walking around the streets in Kyoto that had a bunch of vines growing along it. I was admiring a lot of the architecture as we were walking around, and so I really liked that kind of window at the bottom of this building shaped like a sun. So this is a building that is sort of the architectural style from the 1800s, which was like the Meiji period. And so the Meiji period kind of was a time when Japan was had just been kind of forcibly opened up to trade by the black ships, from the U.S. And Commodore Perry, and so they were worried about falling behind technologically and culturally, and becoming yet another colony, or being divvied up and sort of stripped of their resources like China had been. And so they sent a bunch of their various scholars and architects and artists abroad to study in places like Germany and France. And so a lot of the architecture from that period reflects sort of European influence. And so this is probably some state building from the Meiji period. And this was lunch in Kyoto. And so this is a dish called oyako donburi. And so donburi means rice bowl, just like I got that unagi donburi. And so oyako, oya is parent, ko is child. And so it's chicken and egg rice bowl. And then they use a dashi stock to kind of flavor the egg and the chicken. And so the restaurant that we went to was sort of in another one of these kind of open air shopping streets. And so there was a bunch of seafood vendors, and I was just, kind of taken aback with the amount of seafood on display. And so that evening, Jack particularly wanted to go to a Japanese style bathhouse, which are called sento. And so this is the outside of the bathhouse. You can see on the left-hand side there the umbrella rack for everyone to lock up their umbrellas so that they won't get taken away while they're in the bath. This is just a cool sign for, I think, a clothing store that was in the neighborhood that our Airbnb was. And these are from a dinner which my friend David's wife, Nee, helped prepare for us. She went out and bought a bunch of small dishes. And so on the left is rolled omelet, and then on the top is stewed pumpkin, and then top right is some Japanese yam, and then the bottom is I think hijiki seaweed with soybeans. And this was a plate of various pickles. So, pickled cucumber on the bottom right, some radishes on the bottom left, and then the white slices are of daikon radish. And so I guess we spent 2 days, I think, in Kyoto. And so the second day in the morning, my friend Jack and I decided to go to this very famous Japanese shrine called Fushimi Inari Taisha. And so if you remember, Inari means fox. So as we get up towards the shrine, there's Jack, there's me, and then up to the top right is an Inari, or a fox spirit. And so this is sort of the main shrine that's actually at the base of a little mountain which you can walk up. And so Jack and I decided to do the full tour and go and walk up the mountain. And all along the path up the mountain are statues of the Inari foxes. And this is just a photo of a plaque explaining the different kinds of birds that you would see. I don't think we actually saw any of these, but I took this photo imagining that I'd show it to my friend Charles, who's an ornithologist and big into birds. There is a shisa, or a koma inu, that was sort of next to a little turn-off shrine on the path up the mountain. There's another statue of Fudo Mule. Again, he seems to have his two attendants there, sort of down below him. But again, there's the Buddhist iconography is often, right up against the Shinto iconography. They're sort of intertwined, uh, you know, traditions. And so you'll often see, Buddhist statues as well as the Shinto stuff, but like those little, again, the torii gates are for offering to Shinto deities. And so, like, this is a Buddhist deity, Jizo, who's like a protector of children. And so, as offerings, people have made sort of little knitted caps and bibs and stuff, and then left some flowers. And so, the other kind of icon that Fushimi Inari is famous for are the just, you know, end to end torii gates. And it's almost like a hallway that you can walk down. And so the gates are actually, you know, funded by donations from either wealthy individuals or, companies. And so on each gate is written when it was installed and then who donated the gate. This is just a cool little sculpture of a dragon that's also a hand washing station for a little Shinto shrine. And so there's sort of a ritual of purification when you enter in a shrine to rinse out your mouth and then wash your hands with water to kind of, uh, cleanse them of unclean spirits. This is another little shrine along the way where you can actually see there's some candles lit and there's sort of offerings of incense going. Here's a fox statue with, a little bib and knitted hat made as offerings. And similarly, there's one of the lion dogs or Koma Inu. And there I am standing in sort of one of these hallways of torii gates. And there's Jack. And we're both like 6 feet tall, so they're big gates. And this was back at the base of the mountain. This is a statue of the Buddhist monk Dharma, who or Bodhidharma, who was supposedly the monk who carried the Buddhist scriptures from India through China to Japan. And so David and me weren't interested in going up the mountain, but we met them for lunch after having sort of hiked up the mountain. And so we met up at a udon noodle place. And so these are, unlike the soba, these are hot noodles, but sort of similar to the soba. The noodles are meant to be picked up with chopsticks and then dipped in the kind of concentrated soup broth that's on the left. And this is some tempura fried vegetables and shrimp that I had with my soba. To try to, I don't know, justify some of my collection of the various toys and characters along my way, I wanted to keep drawing as I was going on the trip. And so this is a drawing of one of the monsters that I got along the way. This is Baltan from Ultraman. And so from Kyoto, we got back on the train and started to travel north. And as we headed north, there became sort of more and more snow until we eventually arrived at, I think this district is called Kinosaki. So I'm gonna look it up again. Kinosaki. Saki. So it is, yeah, so there's a train station for it. So this, my photo is from the Kinosaki Onsen sort of train station as we got off, and sort of all the snow was falling. And so we stopped at a place for lunch. And this is, I think, this is sort of a lunch set. So there's some tempura, there's some pickled radishes on that little dish in the middle. There's some sashimi in the top right, along with a cooked sweet shrimp. But what the region is particularly famous for is crab. And so this is actually the street in Kinosaki with a giant crab sculpture. And there are my friends. There's Jack, there's David, and there's David's wife, Nee, walking along the street in the snow. And this is just another view from the street. And so there's a little waterway running down the middle. And so I think I have a photo. Yeah, this is the view sort of down the little canal with the snow-covered trees in Kinosaki. And these were little snowmen outside a coffee shop. And so in Japanese, snowmen are called yuki daruma, yuki being snow, and daruma being bodhidharma. And so depictions of bodhidharma are often him sort of wrapped up in his shawl, or there's even a legend about him, meditating so hard that his arms and legs fall off. So that's why depictions of him are often sort of in a spherical shape, and so makes sense that a snow person made out of two balls would be called yuki daruma. This is just another pretty shot of the snow on the trees along the street side. And so this is a local interpretation of these figurines of Dharma. And so instead of being Bodhidharma, it's actually of a snow owl, and then it's sitting in a tub for a hot spring. And so those are little souvenirs that you could buy. But this is a display in the side in a shop along the street. This is just a cool lamp in a little bookstore cafe that we stopped in. And so you could stop in there, get a cup of coffee, and then they had kind of a library of books along the wall that you could just pick one out and read, or you could purchase one if you wanted. And this is at the actual onsen resort where we all stayed, and this is the view out of our window in our room. And this is a picture Nee took of myself, David, and Jack in front of that window in our Japanese bathrobes, which are called yukata. So oyu is hot water or bath, and so kata is clothes, so bathrobe, yukata. And this is one of the dishes we had at it for one of the courses at a very fancy meal at the resort. This is a crab meatball. These are the various fancy implements that we were provided for our dinner, including the spoon, fork, knife, and then crab fork, as well as chopsticks. This is sort of a fancy vegetable selection of local daikon radishes and arugula and stuff that were meant to be dipped in sort of a in a fancy sauce, which is what's in that little bowl up in the top left, and then you would dip it in some smoked miso paste, which is what that little white dish is. But again, the region is most famous for crab, and so this is like a crab consomme soup that's served with sort of this single crab leg. This is from the lobby in the onsen hotel. And so this was like it was a hotel, but it had a hot spring at it. And so that was sort of the major draw there, was you go there to go to the various baths. And so we went to the bath multiple times and, enjoyed that fancy meal. This is probably the highest end accommodation that I stayed at while I was there. And I certainly would have never done it myself. So I was grateful to be traveling with my friends who, went through the trouble of making the reservation, and sort of setting everything up. I again, it was a really exciting thing, especially to do with my friends from college who had studied Japanese with me. This is a COVID safety sign in the Kinosaki train station, and so these are actually yokai, which are, and this particular yokai is called Amabie, and sort of the story behind it was it appeared to a fisherman and prophesized that there would either be a bountiful harvest in the coming year or a great plague. And in order to avoid the plague, the farmer or the fisherman was supposed to tell people to draw images of Amabie and share them with each other. And so during COVID, it became this big trend on social media like Twitter and Instagram of various artists doing drawings of the Amabie. And so it was also taken on as like a little mascot by the Japanese Department of Health for, practicing wearing a mask and hand washing and stuff. And so you can see one of the Amabie there is wearing a mask to protect against the COVID viruses. This is a funny little advertisement for some curry, which is made with Tajima beef, which is another sort of local delicacy. But the characters there are they're Power Rangers, and so the name of these mascots is Kinosaki Sentai Osenger, and so Kinosaki is the area. Sentai is the Japanese name for kind of like Power Rangers, but it could also be a pun on Sento, which is bath, and then Onsenger is like a weird portmanteau of onsen, which is hot spring, and ranger. So here I am standing in the snow in front of a little Buddhist temple in Kinosaki. There's sort of a wide angle shot. I think Jack took this because he had some experience in photography and actually was a film major. So he's into sort of shot composition. There's my friend David walking around, that little Buddhist temple. And this is a Jizo statue that's at the base of a cable car that we took up from town to the top of the mountain to get a view of Kinosaki. And so if I zoom in here, you can kind of see the train station and town. This is the statue of I think this is the Amida Buddha, who's sort of a incarnation of the Buddha, who sort of intercedes on people's behalf, and even if you aren't someone of particular merit, or aren't completely spiritually poor, it sort of intercedes the Amida Buddha intercedes on your behalf to gain you entrance to the Buddha's paradise or nirvana. This is the cover to a Japanese comic called I'm trying to remember the name of the series. I think it's called Midnight Diner in English translation. It's actually, there's a live action Netflix series that's been made of it, which I enjoyed watching. It's about this guy in Tokyo who runs a little restaurant that's kind of a hole in the wall place that's only open from midnight to like 4 a.m. But it's about all the various customers and regulars he has and types of people who show up to his restaurant. And so this is the owner of the restaurant in the comic. So after Kyoto, we traveled again on the Shinkansen to the city of Kobe. And so when we arrived there, Jack helped make a reservation at a restaurant. And when Jack makes reservations, he often makes it under a Japanese name like Yoshida or Watanabe. And so he had made this reservation, I think, under Yoshida. And so when we showed up, the couple who ran the restaurant was sort of giving us the side eye and saying, oh no, like obviously these people aren't Japanese. Do they even speak Japanese? You know, why did they give the name Yoshida? Like no one amongst them is named Yoshida. We can pretty readily surmise. But luckily, you know, Jack has been living in Japan for 6 years, and so was able to kind of very quickly put them at ease. You know, explain that he's a student at Tokyo University, but that we were all you know, former college classmates. We all took Japanese together, had traveled in Japan. David and me had spent some time living in Kyoto. And so after that, they kind of warmed up to us. So it was sort of a series of small dishes that they served us. So this was like pumpkin and hijiki seaweed, and I think this is crab again. And this is a plate of sashimi. And this was, I think, pork cheek with some bok choy on top. This is just a this is the standout for me of that meal. Was this really wonderful piece of grilled fish? I think it was mackerel. And so the following morning in Kobe, everybody else was tired, so I went out walking myself, and came across this little shrine. I think actually Nee recommended that I check it out. And so this is again one of those Chinese guardian dogs, the Shisa or Koma Inu. And so this is the name of the shrine. So it was the Ikuta Shinto Shrine. This was a drawing I did of a monster from Ultraman while I was sitting in a Starbucks. I had gotten up early. It was still like 9 o'clock or something, and so nothing much was open yet. So I was killing time. So I again wanted to keep up the practice of drawing, and I had actually brought this little toy along in my pocket with the intent to sit down and draw it. So once it got to be around 10 o'clock, I went into the area around the train station in Kobe, and there was sort of a large shopping mall with various shops in it. And so this was in a collectible shop that actually had these display cases that you actually can see on this sticker. It says rental case. And so, people could just rent out a little display cube and then put whatever pieces of their collection they wanted to sell. And so I took this particular picture because of these little keychains, which are from a Japanese children's program that's a stop animation show called Pui Pui Mole Car. And so Pui Pui is the noise that a guinea pig makes, and Molmut, I think, is the name for a guinea pig in Japanese. And so it's a stop animation cartoon about cars that are also guinea pigs. And like Midnight Diner, it's on Netflix if you want to watch it. It's pretty fun. This is another cool display piece of a model kit that had been assembled. And so the shop that I was going around was, as well as selling sort of just general collectible stuff, it was a modeling supply store. So they sold all the paints and kits and stuff. But, some of these actually might have been, models assembled by customers even, and then, they entered in some contest to have their work displayed at the shop. So again, it's a neat sort of experience, almost like going to a museum, but then you can get all the supplies to kind of execute your own piece at the shop. And so this was like a miniature that someone had done of a moss-covered knight. Here's some model kits of characters from that series Gegege no Kitaro, so the various yokai characters. So Kitaro is the guy here on the left. This is Nezumi Otoko, or Rat Man. This is Cat Girl, and I don't know the name of this character, but it looks like some kind of monk carrying his staff there. And I think this is called a Wan Yudo, but it's a cursed spirit who's taken the form of a fiery wheel that like rolls around and chases people. But again, a type of yokai. This is just a really interesting sort of robot model kit. And I really like seeing sort of the various iterations on forms and stuff, and also just these are extremely well executed, well put together examples of the models. Having made model kits like this myself, mine do not look like this. This is probably tens or hundreds of hours, well, maybe not hundreds, but probably like 60 hours worth of work put into assembling and painting these sorts of models by the artists here. And so that's why they're showpieces. That's why they're in the display cases like this. There's Gundam again. This is a little plaza that was sort of in the middle of the shopping arcade near Kobe Station. And it just had sort of a nice little view out into the city. But again, you can see appreciation for sort of Western art there with the sculpture in the middle. I just took a picture of this because I like the name Big Tony. I don't know much about this other than it's a robot. There's that fish guy that I drew, and another little robot character that I found while going around in Kobe. This is the gate to Nanking Machi, or Nanking Town, which is the Chinatown in Kobe. This is a cool chair, I think, that was in a shop that I saw sort of as I was walking up from the center of Kobe with my friend David and Nee. Kobe is sort of like there's sort of a hill that leads up to a part of the city where all the Western diplomats used to live. And so we were headed to kind of look at the European style architecture in that area of town. And so because it was getting near Christmas, they had a display of all these different Santa Clauses climbing all over the various buildings there. But you can see we're starting to get to the top of the hill because we can look out to the side and see the Kobe skyline. I took this photo just because like Kobe was the only city that I noticed street art or graffiti in. Really, there, and it may just have been the areas that I was going around in, but I didn't see hardly any in Tokyo or in Kyoto. And so this is sort of a more, I would say, kind of Western style graffiti art. Whereas this one is actually a character from a Japanese manga series from I think the 80s. It's from a series called Ranma One Half. Here was another drawing I did of that ladybug character from Kamen Rider. And here's Jack, who is about to head up to the Kobe herb garden and ropeway. And so Jack, David, and I all went up to check out the herb gardens on our final day in Kobe. This is just a pretty shot of the trees that are sort of, we're at the base of the ropeway. Here's the view of Kobe as we're kind of heading up on the gondola. We were heading up sort of this mountain. And so here we are at the top in the herb gardens, kind of looking out across to the city. So there's David on the left and Jack on the right. There's a picture Jack took of David and me. And you can see here, these sort of glass covered roofs are the greenhouse that were in the herb gardens. And so it was, clear and sunny when we started, but as we were walking around, these kind of dark clouds began to gather. This was inside a little museum at the top of the ropeway, which was a museum about perfume making. And so I think the herb garden had been used, in the past as a place to kind of grow herbs and stuff to make perfumes. And this was just a cool little terrace that was outside the back of the museum. And this is a little miniature dollhouse diorama that was set up within the museum, showing some European style house. This is a cool gargoyle as we are walking down from the museum towards the greenhouse. This is the view, or this is some of the plants inside the greenhouse. And then this is a drawing that I did on the Shinkansen headed back to Tokyo along with Jack. And so David and me were going to stay on a little bit in Kobe, but I needed to head back to get back home in time for Christmas. And so here I am waiting in the Haneda airport to make it back to the US. And then this was a shot I took upon my safe arrival home of some of the various souvenirs that I picked up along my travels there. Can see, some Kamen Rider stuff, two different versions of Baltan there. This is actually a figure of the Japanese Dogu sculpture, but I actually got this while in the U.S. At a convention. But I included it in sort of the display here because I had gone to the Tokyo National Museum and seen the real ones in real life. So I hope you enjoyed watching this. I enjoy kind of reliving this a little bit and reviewing my photos. And I hope that if you too are interested, that you may have the chance to visit Japan sometime.